Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. Strangle your demons and let's go.
Y'all need Jesus!
Remember when the days were long and rolled beneath the deep blue sky? Didn't have a care in the world, with mommy and daddy standing by. But happily ever after fails, and we've been poisoned by these fairy tales. The lawyers dwell on small details, since daddy had to fly. Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. I am your host, Eric Hellberg, and you know we're like Einstein over here. Men, we have no special talents. We're just passionately curious about all things pertaining to man. How in the hell did we get here? And where is it that we want to go? I'm going to tell you this, man. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. That is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2. And how did we begin, man? How did we begin? That's God's assurance to us. We began with a song by Don Henley, The End of the Innocents. And we are no longer innocent here in this great nation of ours. Our leaders have blood on their hands. They have corrupted all of us. We would like to have a return to our innocence, but once lost, you must forge ahead oftentimes through perilous things to regain it, or a semblance of, what would we say, holiness, in order to get that reinstated and to begin anew after it goes. I tell you what, guys, I was watching a movie last night that was referred to us by a family member. The kids and I gathered around. We hunkered down. We ate dinner. We brought in snacks, 2 bean bags next to my recliner, and we watched The Beekeeper. I'm going to tell you this. There is no higher form that a man can take than to be a beekeeper. The beekeeper. Absolutely. Where he does that for his community, where he does that for his family, or he takes an interest in the bigger things at large, and he does something about it. And we're still drunk from our Independence Day week, and I don't mean in actuality. I mean from the episode that I did. Most people, since July 4th hit on a Thursday, we're all Friday rolling into a weekend. So we can stay on that point quite a bit because we have a legacy. We have a legacy that continues forward after we took that day off. And we have a legacy in this nation. That's why we like seeing that celebrated. We like the peace. We like the familial time. We like being with friends. We like casting aside our worries. We enjoy that. But the legacy persists from all the way back when that Declaration of Independence was signed, same day in 1776. But the whole crux to that movie, The Beekeeper, and we know the dude was a total badass. We loved it. Men are going to love that movie. People who prefer righteousness over wrongdoing will love that movie. People who prefer real justice will love that movie. But basically, just like the Beekeeper stated, our hive is in dysfunction. And much akin to the movie, the queen was faltering because she was putting out defective children. Now you can equate that. That is analogous to, is our nation turning out defective people? Absolutely. Absolutely. All we are interested in these days is the utmost in depravity, debauchery, and hedonism. It's how, just like in the Roman Empire, aka the Colosseum, we kept people distracted despite the multiple problems that were really going on, and or for anyone else to simply look into things that don't quite seem right. Oh yeah, the hive is in dysfunction. And we know that the queen, our government, is turning out inferior people, all the while it is bringing in inferior people to usurp the rights of the proud and the responsible people that have bought in and given to this nation in order to maintain the legacy and give us something to hold on to that we can count on going forward. Just like the song says, didn't have a care in the world with mommy and daddy standing by. Who's standing by us now? Joe Biden? Barack Obama? Hillary Clinton? Who's standing by us now? And the Queen, the leadership. It also is producing petulant and defective offspring. Think about the petulant boy in the movie. Think about Hunter Biden. Think about all the dudes in the show as they start getting rolled up. They're crying for their mommy and daddy. And he was crying for his mommy. And by all accounts, from looking at it, she possessed many good traits. She was well-heeled. Lord willing, the husband who was no longer with them had created an empire. Well, he wasn't sitting at her feet while he was doing that. He was working his balls off, if in fact that is the case. But it got corrupted. It got corrupted by a smart person, a thinking person. He found an angle. Okay, we can equate that to a great many things today. So the offspring was defective. The actual president, she seemed like she conducted herself with a degree of modesty. I mean, minus some language. Okay, she's in a tough position. I have no problem with that. Dressed with appropriate decorum, looked like she cared about people. She was just taken by surprise. And oftentimes there are agendas in this world that will take a president as he comes in by surprise, as he is, quote unquote, read in to these programs that he had no knowledge of before. Maybe because of the position he was in, he wasn't supposed to have access to them before. Maybe despite the fact that he is now the president, there are programs that are run still unbeknownst to him. Okay. So yes, that is your highest calling, to be like the beekeeper. I will applaud that. I challenge you to become more like that. I will do the same. So going back to Don Henley, one of the greatest songwriters of all time from the Eagles, and that was from his solo career, The End of the Innocence. Well, we want to return back to our innocence. And we are tired, since we are continuing our Independence Day celebration, of being dependent upon your celebrations, U.S. government. Joe Biden. Instead of fireworks, we are tired of you lighting up the White House with multicolored LGBTQ wabajoo and all that paraphernalia. Stop humiliating us around the world. Stop making us feel less than about ourselves because we don't, despite the fact you are forcing it down our throats. Stop putting books like How to Have Anal Sex and Is Mommy Really a Daddy and Can Daddy Really Be a Mommy in our children's schools. And just like I began with Isaiah, we know that God will comfort us. And God will see us through this, but he does not want us stationary. You are not going to take this away from us despite the fact you have turned this nation away from God, and we are in a period of rebuke. You people make me puke. And you said it. You said it, Merrick Garland. No one is above the law. Except all the most heinous people, typically Democrats, that you decide who are above the law. Namely, the people I began this episode with. No one is above the law. And that's why we love the movie The Beekeeper, because no one is above God's law. And no one should be above the law in the greatest country on earth, the United States of America. And reflecting back on Isaiah 43:2, that verse is not merely about survival. It's about triumph. It assures us that in God's company, the waters that threaten to overwhelm us, and yes, they are all around us, but they will become passageways to new strength. And the fires that we fear, that we see this nation ablaze, will transform us into refining experiences that leave us unscathed, shaped, and shining brighter. We are creating a movement, men. A movement of men who have had enough, want to be guided by the Lord God Almighty, and we want to do what is right. And we are going to say what is right. We are going to be different. We are not going to be like the greater groups at large around here. We are molding ourselves. We are sloughing off the extraneous. We are going to rid ourselves of the unproductive parts of us and what we see around us, much akin to the beekeeper working on the hive. So I am thinking, if no one is above the law, and we're still in Independence Day mantra, I'm wondering why, when you hear about the January 6th insurrection, which was purely orchestrated, diversionary, to keep us and create a new brand of chaos so we would never look further into the actual election votes, the mechanism by which they were stolen from us. But we have heard for how many years the insurrection. Why have we not heard very little, but typically not one scintilla of information about the roughly 1,000 people that were taken into captivity? I did not say custody as a result of their detainment, arrest during the purported insurrection of January 6th. What about the ones that were so beat down emotionally and mentally, knew they had been framed, knew they had been set up? They're all being branded as traitors, held without due process, despite this being the United States of America, despite them being in federal custody at the seat of power in America, where the judicial system prevails. Right then and there, they get no due process. We have never heard about their arraignments, maybe 3 or 4 of them. We have never heard about their counsel representing them. We have never heard about their exact whereabouts. We have not seen one story about their families. We have not heard more about the ones who were so despondent that they committed suicide and left families behind. We have not heard one thing about the insurrectionists, the supposed people that were responsible for this insurrection. But we have heard about the word insurrection over and over. But the people who purportedly did it, and all the lives affected, many of which are languishing without due process even to this day, why haven't we not heard about the perps, the perpetrators, and those around them? Why have they been tucked away and hidden, never to be mentioned again? Especially if no one's above the law, Merrick Garland. Well, bring them up front and center, and let's let them have their day, and let's hear about what has actually transpired and what we know about now. Remember in yesterday's episode I was talking, it could have been the day before, rubber bullets, CS gas. I received a video clip. Nope, it wasn't for the closed caption security footage of the Capitol grounds and all the adjacent grounds, any place that anyone would have parked, walked, went. The whole area has more cameras than God knows. But I got to see some good old cell phone camera footage, mobile phone footage, and it's very good these days. And it was actually sent to me, and I'm going to tell you this, by a prominent person who still has a job in a place that gets perverted all the time. It has to send out a very certain message, but yet it is considered prestigious. So if the New England Journal of Medicine talks about COVID and says, hey, that's totally legit, we take it as gospel, even though we know that it is not. But this person, I'm not even going to give you their sex, currently works for that organization and sent me a video. Oh, yeah. And did you know that three protesters, they walk into you could call it a covey, a slightly wooded enclave, because there's clusters of trees around the Capitol. And they left the crowds, and they are now changing into different outfits to quote unquote look conservative, and of course adorn themselves with MAGA hats. Now, to emerge from the trees, go back into the group at large, and to now get a little bit jiggy, and now to create a little bit of chaos. But I saw the mobile phone footage. It's out there, man. I wonder how many people's phones, how many people were initially detained, phones taken away, footage checked. There is so much more to that story, guys. In some recent episodes, of course, we've also discussed good old Lockheed Martin Corporation, a bastion of American freedom and liberty, and a model for good old corporate capitalism and how business is actually done in Washington. And I was like, I really want to know. And I told you how they have made bank during the last few years under Joe Biden, where we're at war everywhere. And of course, our promissory, for lack of a better term, our promissory acknowledgement to Ukraine. And I was wondering who the heck is on that board. But then I looked up the chairman and president, the chief executive officer of Lockheed Martin Corporation. He's a handsome guy. That's Jim Taslett. He's an old Air Force pilot. He went on to some other things. Oh, yeah. Did you know when he took over in just March of 2021 that Lockheed Martin's market capitalization was $2 billion? That's fairly enormous. But since that time up until present, that their market capitalization as a company, they're worth over $100 billion these days. Great job, Jim. We really appreciate your time and service. And yes, sir, your old shareholders ought to be very proud. Let's take another look who comprises the rest of the Lockheed Martin board. Let's run through some of the names, man. Now, we've got Thomas Falk. He was the former chairman of Kimberly-Clark Corporation. That's a medical company. We've got Patricia Yarrington. Oh, baby. Now, she was the retired vice president and the CFO of Chevron, defense contractor, oil company. Spent a lot of time in the Middle East, okay? We've got Joseph Dunford. Oh, he's a retired U.S. Marine Corps general. You see what happens? You leave service, you rise up there, you say yes enough times, you get to the right spot, and then you get a cushy seat on the defense contractors board. Then we got old John M. Donovan. Oh, yeah, he was a retired CEO at AT&T. Yep, of course, we know that many of these are very precise and what would we call them? Laser-guided munitions, high-technology ordnance. So you need all the stuff like that John would have worked at AT&T, of course. Then you've got David Burritt. Oh, yeah, David Burritt was the president and CEO of the United States Steel Corporation. I guess for the little bit of steel we still have left, old David used to be in charge of that. Defense contractor, it's good to be tied in with steel. Of course, it's good to be tied in with oil. We've got Bruce Carlson. Oh, yeah, he's a retired U.S. Air Force general, jumped right onto the board. We've got Vicki Hollub. Vicki Hollub, president and CEO of another oil company on the Lockheed Martin board, of Occidental Petroleum Company. And then, of course, you've got old Jay Johnson. Remember Jay Johnson from his days in the White House with Obama? And, of course, he is now, since he has left governmental service, he's a partner at Paul Weiss, Rickifine Wharton, and Garrison LLP. One of his principal jobs for Lockheed Martin since leaving good old Obama is classified business and security. It just keeps going round and round and round. So that segues into another story. We know that we are up to our necks in Ukraine. And recently, and I'm going to tell you, this dude's badass. I mean, I had seen him before. I mean, dude is well built, man. He's got the consummate jar head for being a 2-star, a major general in the United States Marine Corps. And what was Marine Major General William F. Mullen's United States posting? Well, he was in charge of Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center at 29 Palms. It's a place I kind of know. I mean, back in my day, we used to go to the equivalent there for the Army in Fort Irwin. They were adjacent to one another at the National Training Center. A couple of years, I went as advance party just to set things up for the units that were going to come. We trained a lot with the Marines there. Like I said, they were right next door. I'll tell you something that's tragic. I remember we were out in the box. That's what we called our areas where we went against opposing forces and simulated desert battle. A recon element from the Marine Corps went out. And, geez, man, they got wayward, they got lost. And, you know, that topography and the desert and the mountains, it can be very beguiling. You think you're going in the right direction, but really you're not. And they ended up dying of exposure, dehydration. And so for the nation's finest, we weren't even in battle, and just simply in training, they perished out there. But that is one of the premier places in our United States to prepare the Marine Corps for war. But evidently, Washington decided that Major General William Mullen needed to go take a look in Ukraine. I'm not sure what he was there to observe. I am not sure what he was there to advise. But I am also pretty sure that whatever he took away from there, he did not agree with. He may not have approved of it, and he probably wanted to tell someone about it. And that is why the 59-year-old Major General of the Marine Corps was found mysteriously dead on the base there in 29 Palms, California. No real sign of foul play that we know of. He just simply dropped dead in a building by himself. And investigations are underway. As I learn more, so will you. We will keep tying. You know, we hate loose ends. We hate loose ends on the Comfortable in Chaos podcast, and men hate loose ends. They like to see something, proceed, complete it, be assured, and then move on. So, of course, we did a long episode yesterday on Libby, and I mentioned you that I have some of Hillary's emails, which I do. It's not just me. But I do have one opened up. And when you think about that whole Libyan debacle, it is so familiar. Do we just simply go round and round in the world? Regime change, this one good, this one bad. Do you think, and of course this all happened under Obama, and Obama as president, and Hillary as Secretary of State, all the while presiding over funds going into the wonderful Clinton Foundation. No funds since 1999 through 2014. No country gave more money to the Clinton Foundation other than the country of Ukraine, the one where we were spending hundreds of billions to this day to hide our deviancy and to depose someone who actually, poses no threat to Ukraine. but you created that. Now, you got to remember that Zelensky was brought in under the guise of peace. And that's how he actually beat Poroshenko, right? Okay, that was the previous president. And did you know there's an old interview where Poroshenko said, oh, yeah, we know that they are pushing for NATO membership. But that's off the table. We've already said we are not joining NATO. And Russia has already said that we are not joining NATO. The only way that we can become a NATO member nation is with a war. And he said this, Zelensky didn't come in until 19, but Poroshenko said that years before. This has been brewing for an awful long time. So for those who control the narrative, let me ask you this. Would it have been easier for good old Barry Obama to say, you know what, my administration, I want to rally some American support behind this regime change since we're going to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi because the French really want to steal Libya's wealth and maintain French neo-colonial influence over Africa. Or for the simpletons in America that have been dumbed down because, remember, the Hive is in dysfunction and we are turning out inferior men. Or would this sell better? Okay, all right. Muammar Gaddafi's been passing out Viagra to his troops so they can rape more women. And we know women are important, and they are. But is this for real? Yes, it is for real. It is what was said. And his snipers can target innocent children. Bingo! Selection number 2 is what was run with, and Obama said it. Yeah, you just heard me. Gaddafi is passing out Viagra to his troops so they can rape more women while his snipers target innocent children. That's really funny since he provided free education to all those kids. He paid every family that had a children. He wanted a population, a Libyan dense population of his people, and would pay them every time a child was born. And in fact, the health care that provided the baby upon delivery was done for free. So he wanted to kill those children. Well, selection 2 is what we were sold with. All right, so let's take a little bit closer look. Who were these emails by good old Hillary to? Well, now that 3,000 of these emails were preserved, 3,000 of them were off of her private server and on the subject of Libya, and the subjects were many. We may get into some of those down the road on other topics. But regarding Libya, she always emailed one person, no other than Sidney Blumenthal. Now, who was Sidney Blumenthal? Long-term Clinton attorney, Democratic operative, a keeper of the secrets, right? A cleaner after the messes had been made. And of course, he's also the guy who defended Billy Bob in his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Remember, since he's an attorney, he was arguing over the semantics. Is sex sex? The does not mean sex. We know that this, okay, we get it. Sidney Blumenthal, a former attorney for the family, and this is who she would email with. I'm going to read you her exact emails. Here we go. Gaddafi's government holds 143 tons of gold. I think I said 148. I was just going off the top of my head and remembering. And a similar amount in silver. This gold was accumulated prior to the current rebellion and was intended to be used to establish a Pan-African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar. This plan was designed to provide the Francophone African countries with an alternative to the French franc. And what does NATO do? If one Western country in NATO is aggrieved, well, they all get together and gang up on the one that they want to destroy. Or put the appropriate representation in there, meaning buy them off, aka Zelensky, and then we go in and plunder the resources of that country. That's why in December of 2022, although Zelensky is a puppet nobody, Larry Fink, and who is Larry Fink? The chairman and CEO of BlackRock, probably the United States, if not the world's largest corporation. paid a visit to nobody Zelensky. And they developed their own patronage program whereby, even though a war had just started, he said, don't worry about it. BlackRock and our constituents, meaning the companies that BlackRock owns, will rebuild Ukraine for you. We'll take care of that for you, Vladimir. They're going to rebuild a country on a conflict that just started? Who is Zelensky? BlackRock went over there to get patronage. And Zelensky agreed. He says, you got it, bud. You can take care of it. Man, that's big money. Those are big jobs. You see how it's all kind of changing shape? So I guess, the media said that Hillary Clinton took a victory lap. Sounds like it was a little bit premature because NATO started bombing Libya under the guise of a humanitarian intervention. And we had already set loose Al-Qaeda operatives through the country, where before their intelligence services and ours were sharing information about their whereabouts so we could target them in other countries. Okay. Well, it sounds like these emails kind of reveal another agenda behind the Libyan war. And here is what Hillary said. Hillary said that French intelligence officers, this is after talking about the gold and silver and the new currency that would no longer allow us to trade in U.S. dollars, only in the dinar, only in gold. Hillary said French intelligence officers discovered this plan shortly after the current rebellion began. And this was one of the factors that influenced President Nicolas Sarkozy's decision to commit France to the attack on Libya. Oh, yeah. Remember him before Macron? It was Sarkozy, right? And we couldn't stand for that because Libya used to be a French colony. According to these individuals, meaning these intelligence operatives, and we know we can always trust people in intelligence. Remember the 51 intelligence operatives that said Hunter's laptop was false? It was Russian collusion. Yeah, we can always trust our intelligence operatives. We can trust that they will concoct a story that benefits the people who set them out to do so. Okay. Well, here are the factors that influenced President Nicolas Sarkozy's decision to commit France to the attack on Libya. According to these individuals, Sarkozy's plans are driven by the following issues. And by the way, when the NATO bombing began, that great water infrastructure where they were bringing water in from the desert, almost miraculously, filtering it through the greater countryside and right down into the coast, that's what they destroyed from the people of Libya first, their water supply. And according to the French intelligence officers, they did it because, one, there is a French desire to gain a greater share of Libya oil production. We want more of Libya's oil. Okay. Kind of goes back to all these oil people on the board of Lockheed Martin, Occidental Petroleum and Chevron. We want to increase French influence in North Africa. Yep, they're not taking us into account anymore. We want to make money in North Africa. We need to improve President Sarkozy's internal political situation in France. He's a pussy. We need to help him look strong. So let's go take advantage of a disadvantaged people who really were doing better than the people in France. Provide the French military with an opportunity to reassert its position in the world. That's why you always get the word coalition. Okay, leave Gaddafi's guys to their own and just simply send French forces and he'll whoop the living shit out of the French forces. But no, you knock on the door, you get your old NATO brothers in there and combine the combined power of NATO. They can probably handle Muammar Gaddafi. Okay. And lastly, address the concern of his advisors over Gaddafi's long-term plans to supplant France as the dominant power in Francophone Africa. Oh yeah, France was no longer going to be imperial. They were not going to be the ones in charge. It was going to be the people and the ruler of their own nation. Now, as Paul Harvey said, you have the rest of the story. And I think on that note, you know where we ought to go with this? since we started off with Don Henley's End of the Innocents, and it is a beautiful song, maybe we ought to end there. And I think we will. Oh, beautiful, full, spacious skies. Now those skies are threatening. They're beating plowshares into swords for this tired old man that we elected king. Armchair warriors often fail, and we've been poisoned by these fairy tales. The lawyers clean up all the tales since Daddy had to lie. I'll see you next time on the Comfortable in Chaos podcast.